It was the kind of morning that promised nothing out of the ordinary. Students shuffling into class, the buzz of conversation filling the corridors. I had just finished writing the day's lesson plan on the board when he walked in. Arjun, a last-minute replacement for Ms. Rao, who was taking medical leave. Dressed in a crisp white shirt and gray slacks, he carried himself with quiet confidence. The principal introduced him briefly, and just like that, he was seated at the corner desk in my classroom, observing. His presence was calm, his eyes focused, and I could feel an unusual awareness settle in the room. After class, we spoke. His voice was low, thoughtful, almost rehearsed. "You have a great grip on your students," he said. I thanked him, surprised at the sincerity in his tone. That compliment stayed with me. Over the next few days, we crossed paths more often by the staff room, in the library during lunch breaks. He was always courteous, and when he laughed, it was soft, almost careful. We started sitting together during lunch, our conversations drifting from classroom techniques to favorite books. I found myself smiling more. He noticed the smallest things, a new pen I carried, a scarf I wore twice in a week. It was innocent at first, just two teachers connecting over work, or so I told myself. But I began waiting for those moments. His presence made the day easier. One Friday afternoon, while discussing a student's essay, our hands brushed reaching for the same paper. I froze. He didn't move away. Our eyes locked for a moment longer than necessary. Then he smiled, almost as if nothing had happened, and continued the conversation. But I couldn't shake that feeling. Something shifted. That weekend, I found myself thinking about him more than I should have. I didn't know much about his past. He mentioned he'd recently moved cities, left a prestigious private school job for something real. I asked no more. I didn't want to ruin the magic that was slowly forming in our quiet moments. The next Monday, I found a post-it note on my desk with a line from my favorite author, one I had casually quoted during lunch the week before. No signature. But I knew. My heart beat faster. I felt like I was being seen in a way I hadn't for years. One evening, as we left campus together, it started to rain. We took shelter under the school archway. I was shivering slightly. He noticed, took off his jacket, and offered it. It was warm, smelled faintly of citrus, and something earthy. We stood in silence, listening to the rain fall heavily. He turned to me and said, "You make this place feel like something more." I didn't respond. I didn't know how. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, a senior colleague pulled me aside. Her tone was casual, but her words sharp. "Just be careful, all right? He's new. You don't know everything yet." I nodded, brushing it off, but her words echoed all day. Still, when I saw Arjun waiting by the coffee machine, smile easy and warm, I pushed the doubt aside. Because something about him felt worth the risk. We began spending more time together, and it felt effortless. Every conversation with Arjun flowed like we'd known each other for years. He would wait for me after class, sometimes bring me coffee. Without asking how I took it, he already knew. Our messages turned from quick reminders about classwork to long, late-night exchanges filled with personal stories, dreams, and half-written confessions. He never rushed anything. His calm made me feel safe, and his attention made me feel special. There was something incredibly intimate about the way he listened. He remembered the names of my favorite students, asked about my mother's health after a single mention, and even showed up with a book I had said I'd been meaning to read. He was thoughtful in a way that didn't feel performative. Slowly, the walls I had built over the years began to lower. I let him into my space, into my life. What started as brief moments between classes soon became long evenings spent talking in the staff lounge, papers left untouched as we got lost in our own little world. One night, after a school event, we stayed behind to help clean up. The silence of the empty building made every glance more charged, every word feel heavier. I thanked him for staying, and he responded with a quiet, "There's no place I'd rather be." It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. That night, I didn't stop him when he reached for my hand. It was the beginning of something unspoken but undeniable. From then on, it became harder to hide what was happening. A student walked in unexpectedly one afternoon while we stood a little too close. Another staff member raised an eyebrow when she saw us leave together, both laughing at something only we understood. I knew the risk, but I was already too deep. He told me he didn't care what people thought. He wanted to be with me. He talked about transferring to a school nearby if things ever got complicated. I believed him. We started talking about the future. He mentioned wanting to pursue a teaching fellowship in another city and asked if I would consider joining him. It felt like a dream unfolding, one conversation at a time. For the first time in years, I pictured a life that wasn't centered around loneliness. I found myself walking into school with a lighter step, smiling for no reason. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to keep it just ours, untouched by judgment or interference. But the warnings hadn't completely disappeared. A junior teacher mentioned that she thought our June was too smooth and always seemed to say the right things to everyone. I laughed it off, defending him without hesitation. He was different with me. What we had was real. Still, something shifted in the way I observed him. I noticed he always put his phone face down. Sometimes, he'd walk out mid-conversation to take a call. When I asked who it was, he'd say, "Just family stuff, nothing serious." Late one evening, I glanced at his phone by accident. A message had popped up. It read, "Don't forget what you promised. We need to talk." It wasn't signed, and he grabbed the phone quickly, saying it was nothing important. I nodded, but something inside me stirred, a tightness I couldn't explain. That night, as I lay in bed, I tried to dismiss the growing discomfort, telling myself not to jump to conclusions. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was starting to grow roots. The following days were different. He still smiled, still said the right things, but something was off. He'd cancel plans last minute, seemed distracted, and when I tried to talk about it, he brushed it off with vague explanations. "Just tired," he said. "Too much going on at home." But I wasn't convinced. His phone was always on silent now. He stopped replying to my messages as quickly as before. I told myself not to be insecure, but my instincts weren't quiet. One afternoon, a student approached me hesitantly. "I saw Mr. Arjun at the cafe on Sunday," she said. He was with a woman. They were holding hands. I felt my stomach drop. I forced a smile, asked who it was, and she said, "Not anyone from here, I think." She was older. They looked close. I thanked her and pretended not to care. But I did. I couldn't focus the rest of the day. I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a cousin, maybe someone from back home. I waited until we were alone again to ask. He laughed at first, saying the student must have been mistaken. But the more I pressed, the more his confidence cracked. Finally, he sighed and said, "There's something I've been meaning to tell you." The silence that followed was louder than any storm. "I was in a relationship," he said. "It wasn't supposed to last, but things got complicated. She moved here recently. We're trying to work things out." I stood there, stunned, every word hitting harder than the last. "You never told me," I whispered. He looked away. "I didn't want to hurt you." I wanted to scream, but I stayed quiet. I had trusted him. I had built dreams based on his promises, on moments I thought were genuine. He had looked me in the eye so many times and made me believe I mattered. And now, all of it was a lie? He tried to soften it. What we had was real too. I didn't fake anything. But the words felt hollow. If it was real, why was I the one left in the dark? I walked away, without saying another word. That night, I stared at my phone, scrolling through old messages, the sweet texts, the tiny compliments, the inside jokes. Each one now felt like a cruel game. He had played both sides. I had been a convenience, a distraction, something temporary. And the worst part was, I had seen the signs and ignored them because I wanted so badly to believe in him. The next day, I saw him on campus, laughing with someone. It was effortless for him. For me, it felt like something inside had shattered. I kept my distance. But that evening, I saw him again, this time not alone. He was with her. The same woman the student had mentioned. They looked happy. They held hands. And in that moment, everything confirmed itself. He hadn't chosen me. He had never planned to. I went home in silence, deleted every message, every photo, and sat alone in the dark, questioning how I had fallen so easily. How someone could pretend to care so convincingly. I had given him the truest part of me, and he walked away like it meant nothing. I didn't see Arjun much after that day. Word spread quietly, as it always does in places like ours. He didn't try to explain again, and I didn't seek closure. What was there left to say? He continued his routine, walking the halls like nothing had happened. I focused on my work, throwing myself into lesson plans, grading, anything that kept my mind busy. But even then, his absence echoed louder than his presence ever did. It hurt more because I let him in. I broke every rule I had set for myself, trusted when I shouldn't have, hoped when I should have questioned. The betrayal wasn't just in what he did, it was in how easily he made me feel seen, only to turn away like I never existed. I replayed every moment we shared, searching for signs I had missed, wondering if he ever meant any of it. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized the truth wasn't just painful, it was humiliating. People around me noticed the change. I smiled less, spoke only when necessary, and left right after school. I avoided staff meetings where he might be. I didn't want pity, didn't want anyone to ask questions or offer comfort. What could they say that would undo the damage? I had to rebuild the parts of myself that I had offered to someone who didn't deserve them. It wasn't easy. I'd lie awake some nights, still hearing his voice, still remembering how effortlessly he had made me fall. Weeks passed. He eventually left the school, said he got a better offer elsewhere. Just like that, he disappeared from my life the same way he entered it. Without warning. He didn't say goodbye. No apology, no explanation. Just gone. It should have brought me peace, but instead, it left a void. There was no final chapter, no clean ending. Just unanswered questions and a silence that lingered long after he was gone. But with time, the hurt softened. I began to see him clearly, not as the man I wanted him to be, but as the man he really was. Charming, calculated, and temporary. Someone who knew how to make people feel important just long enough to get what he needed. I wasn't the first, and I wouldn't be the last. It wasn't about me. It was about him. That realization freed me more than any apology ever could. I started writing again. Something I hadn't done in years. I filled pages with everything I hadn't said, not for him, but for myself. Each word was a step away from who I was with him and closer to who I was before him. I didn't need closure from him. I needed to remember who I was before I allowed someone like that into my world. Love stories don't always end with forever. Sometimes they end with lessons. And this one taught me that love, real love, isn't built on sweet words or fleeting touches. It's built on honesty, depth, and intention. He gave me none of that. But he gave me clarity. And now, I carry that with me, not as a scar, but as a reminder of what I will never accept again.